I'll say this. I didn't think we'd have that many movies to cover, but we have quite a few. What is up, Flick fans? Welcome back to my channel. We do this every month. We talk the best and worst movies that I saw in that particular month. This time, we're talking April. I can't believe it's already April. And like I said in the intro, I didn't expect to have this many movies to cover, but on demand, Netflix, Amazon Prime, HBO, they all put out their fair share of films, and, you know, I was still missing the movies that we were supposed to get, but these, well, at least a few of these did the job that they needed to do to tide us over. So if you guys like this series, be sure to get in that comment section down below. Let me know which movie was your favorite from this month, and hit that thumbs up button. It really does help out this channel. It tells me you want to see more like this. But let's get right into it, man. We have a lot of movies to cover, and we start with the marquee release. The one that means the most. It's Trolls World Tour. It's the reason AMC and Universal are fighting right now. So was it worth it? And I know a lot of people really enjoyed this film. Listen, if you liked the first Trolls, you'll probably get something out of the sequel. But for me, the sequel, it didn't fall completely flat, but it just wasn't enough for me to say it was a good movie or even an okay film. I mean, I've just seen so many animated movies like this that will absolutely appeal to kids. So the target audience is there. And you look at that Rotten Tomatoes score and the fact that some people really enjoy themselves, I actually may be in the minority on this one. So we're starting out on a negative note because I am a negative Nancy. But I unfortunately have to put Trolls World Tour on the meh tier. It just wasn't the animated movie that I think we all deserved. Next up, Love, Wedding, Repeat. Well, we're going to repeat what we just did and put this on the meh tier. Listen, I didn't think this was the worst thing in the world, and it's one of those films that I think has its charm. It's called Love, Wedding, Repeat for a reason because it has this quirky element to it that I didn't expect going in. Likeable characters some of the time, and interesting relationships that I think work well for what the movie is going for. But overall, Love, Wedding, Repeat is the kind of movie you watch and you know it's either a television movie or a Netflix original. You know that they had this concept, they had this idea, they just didn't fully execute it. It has that British humor. Some of it falls flat, but I'll be honest, I was laughing more than I anticipated, and that's why I can't put it below the meh tier, but I'm putting it on the meh tier because it's just so predictable, and the relationships feel so forced at times, and it's a forgettable movie. And I think that's the big detriment for a film like this. Next up is The Willoughbys, a quirky and beautifully animated film on Netflix. Well, I'll be honest with you. When I was watching, I'm like, I don't know if this is like magnificent animation just because it's so different, or if it's a little cheap because at times it felt a little bit cheap, but it was really colorful. It kept me on my toes in terms of entertainment because you have this family who hatches this plan to make their parents leave town because they are the world's worst parents. And that's one thing I had about this movie in my mind. I'm like, they're a little too mean for a kid's movie, but this is the perfect movie for kids on Netflix. It didn't go that extra mile. It didn't do what Klaus did, especially didn't do what I Lost My Body did, but it did enough to appeal to kids, and it's this, in its core, it's this sweet, heartfelt story that I think a lot of people are going to relate to, so I actually have to put The Willoughbys on the okay tier. Next up, Earth and Blood. Man, this is unfortunate. This is one I didn't get to review on this channel. I wanted it to be so much more than it actually ended up being. But I have to put Earth and Blood on the bad tier. Now, it gets close to the meh tier for me, and it started out pretty strong. It's a shorter film. It doesn't last very long. It's about this guy who owns a sawmill deep in his woods, and one of his apprentices is forced to hide a lot of cocaine inside of the factory. And from there, you can only imagine plenty of gang-related violence, shootouts, and that does its job. What didn't do its job was the story and the cohesiveness of the plot and the fact that it just couldn't keep itself afloat throughout the entire movie. And for a film with this much gore and this many bloody elements to it, it didn't really keep my interest, and it got really slow in the middle of the film. And for a movie that's less than an hour and a half to feel this long, and then you get a payoff at the end, but even then it wasn't worth the time spent. So unfortunately, I have to put it on the bad tier. LA Originals, a really sweet documentary on Netflix, and this is the first movie we are going to put on the good tier. I didn't get a chance to review this, but I did incorporate it into my Netflix documentary video, and just a really solid time learning about these two fascinating individuals, one photographer, one tattoo artist. I know you guys have probably heard the name Mr. Cartoon. And the cameos in this documentary. Everyone from Eminem to Snoop Dogg to Kobe Bryant, which was a sad cameo, but you just get a peek into their lives and what Los Angeles is all about, what it represents. And that was the coolest element I got from that movie. So, good film. Didn't go that extra mile. I didn't love it. Maybe it's because I don't relate to the subject matter, but I was interested and I was intrigued, and my wife and I both sat and really enjoyed this film. Thank goodness we got a great movie this month, and that is Bad Education. It actually hit my top 5 on the year so far. Not that it's had the most immense amount of competition, but Bad Education is just a really good movie, man. Hugh Jackman giving one of his better performances. The cast is fantastic. You have a great story being told about multiple individuals who are, doing a little bit of embezzling with the school's money, but you understand why they're doing what they're doing. Maybe you don't relate, maybe you're not on their side, but you get it. You understand their mentality, and telling the story from Hugh Jackman's perspective, I thought was a really good idea, and just everything about this movie worked for me. You look at it, you see HBO, and that right there kind of ups it in your mind and what the quality could be. Thankfully, it lives up. This is one I would have liked to have seen in theaters, but it doesn't require it being seen in theaters. Check it out if you guys have HBO. Next up, The Road's Not Taken. And so you have a movie following 24 hours in the life of a father and a daughter as she is grappling with the challenges of dealing with her father's chaotic mental state, and he is slowly disappearing into his past, or versions of what his past could have been. Here's the thing. You have magnificent talent. You have Elle Fanning. You have Javier Bardem. You have Selma Hayek. And you have really solid... a solid feel to the film that you don't get in a movie very often because it's dealing with this sensitive subject matter, and the performances are great. But this movie, and I don't know if it's the pacing, I don't know if it's the way that they patched these storylines together, or just the awkward nature of the storytelling. This movie was kind of awful. The Road's Not Taken takes subject matter that is very important to many people. A lot of people are going to be able to relate. And in a way, that aspect of the film is beautiful. And you have Javier Bardem. You have Elle Fanning. Where did this go wrong? Well, it's all about the storytelling and the pacing. And the filmmaking is bad. It's really bad. And at the end of the day, you're looking back going, nothing worked for me. Nothing came together. Dangerous Lies, the movie I literally just put a review out for on this channel, and we have another awful film. Look, I know Camila Mendes has her fans, the Riverdale fans that are going to flock over to this film expecting something magnificent, and some may claim it's good. Look, I don't think she was bad in the movie, but I think her character was bad, and I think the writing was bad, and I feel like it's a film that you're going to go into hoping A, B, and C doesn't happen. And by the time the third act is over with, you're going to say, well, I got the whole alphabet. Nope, Dangerous Lies is not good. It's not a good movie. I literally just talked about it, so I don't want to rehash my thoughts. But predictable, a hilarious villain, and it's a Netflix movie that it feels like a TV film. Feels like a Hallmark movie. It's the director of many Hallmark movies, so shocker there. Next up, we're talking Swallow. I'm going to go ahead and place this on the tier, and then I will explain myself, because this movie is wacky. You have Hunter, played by Haley Bennett, and she's a newly pregnant housewife, and she finds herself increasingly compelled to consume dangerous objects. As her husband and his family tighten their control over her life, she has to confront the dark secret behind her new obsession. And I can absolutely see how someone will watch this movie and say, Austin, you're an insane person. You hate The Road's Not Taken, and you hate The Dangerous Lies, and you give The Swallowing a good review. It's a weird film, okay? I won't lie to you. And some may feel empty at the end of this movie, like, why did I watch that? But I found it compelling because of the filmmaking. I found it compelling because of the craft. Sometimes source material doesn't necessarily appeal to you on the surface, but then you watch the movie and you're like, well, that was, executed well, and the acting was good, and Haley Bennett was really good, and I got more out of this movie than I was anticipating. Is it weird? Yes. Was some of it cringeworthy? Yes, but not in terms of how much I was enjoying it. It was more the conversations and the dialogue, but you have some awkward people in this movie, so you're going to get cringeworthy moments. And I've not felt this way about a movie all year. It was well done. Looks good. It was filmed well. The script was interesting. But the movie itself was quirky. So if you don't like it, I understand. But for me, it's on the good tier. Next up is True History of the Kelly Gang. Now, I didn't give this movie a 7 out of 10. I gave it right below it. So I'm like, is it okay? Is it good? I'm still going to go good. True History of the Kelly Gang, while it didn't live up to my expectations because they were all the way up here, I saw this cast, Russell Crowe, Nicholas Hoult, George McKay, who gives an incredible performance. And it's called True History of the Kelly Gang, but you're not actually getting the true history. This is fabricated. This is something that is told from a certain perspective. But I love the way we started out, his childhood, how he got to where he is right now. And I thought that worked really well. And while George McKay's performance as Ned Kelly was awesome, the second half of the movie is where it lost me, because you're cramming so many things into a small amount of time for what you're giving us, and that's where the film started to fall apart. And it's sloppy. It still looks great. The visuals are spectacular. You have Justin Kurzel, a guy that I needed him to redeem himself from Assassin's Creed, and I think he did that here slightly, but the movie fell short of my expectations. Disappointed, on the edge of okay and good, still going to put it on the good tier. Next up is Tiger Tail. Tiger Tail was a beautiful movie on Netflix. I'm going to go ahead and place it close to the good tier, but I am going to put it on the great tier. A beautiful experience and a movie that is told in such a way. Now, if this wasn't told in the way that it was told, if we would have gotten it in chronological order, I don't know if it would have appealed to me as much, but the way these two stories converge, and you have a man reflecting on the lost love of his youth and his journey long ago from Taiwan to America as he begins to reconnect with his estranged daughter. And what a heartbreaking story. The way this movie ends off, I look at Alan Yang as a director, and I'm just like, that is the perfect way to do it. Really impressed me with the way that this movie was crafted, executed, and you guys have heard me rave about it already. Fell short of expectations in a few moments, and it just slowed down in the middle, but overall, Tiger Tail is on Netflix. It's worth a watch. Let's get this out of the way. It's the Jesus Rolls. It's the sequel of sorts for The Big Lebowski, starring John Turturro, Bobby Cannavale, John Hamm. I mean, the cameos are endless in this film, but oh my goodness, what happened here? Awful. The definition of awful. And when I rank these at the end, you're going to see how bad this truly is. The Jesus Rolls took everything I loved about The Big Lebowski and just tore it to shreds. And John Turturro has come out and said, listen, I'm passionate about this material. I love the script. I love where we're going with this. I was kind of excited for this movie myself personally, but it goes overboard in every possible way. So you have the character of Jesus. He pairs up with a few of his fellow misfits for a joyride of petty crime and romance. Overboard on the romance, not enough crime, wasn't entertaining, felt pointless and empty. If you want my full review, it's on Letterboxd, but the Jesus Rolls is rolling all the way to the bottom. Next up, Extraction, a good movie. Now let's get the negatives out of the way. The script is not the best. It's a film that doesn't go as deep as you want it to, and a lot of people are making John Wick comparisons. I made a John Wick comparison in terms of the action, but with the story, John Wick is still, head and shoulders above it. But you look at the direction, you look at what a lot of people were expecting with this film, and that wasn't a lot. Extraction is a fun time. And some are going to look at me and say, well, it's just the fact that you haven't gotten a lot of movies this year, this and that. But no, man, Hemsworth fits the role. You don't completely buy into the connection between the boy and Hemsworth's character, but by the end, it's one of those thrilling experiences, especially, and everybody's talked about it, the one take in the middle, and really impressed with what the director was able to do, produced by the Russo brothers. A formula for success that I think paid off at the end of the day. Go ahead and speed this up a little bit. Behind You is all about two sisters that find mirrors in their aunt's house, and one of them accidentally releases a malicious demon. Congratulations. Now, this film didn't do it for me. Behind You is a very amateurish feeling horror film that falls into every trap that you can possibly fall in a horror movie. And you guys know me. I love horror that does it right. I love horror that doesn't fall into the traps that Behind You falls in. And if you watch my review, you saw how frustrated I was with how this thing played out. It feels low budget, the acting is bad in parts, and you think the movie is over, and then you have 15, 20 more minutes. So Behind You is one that thankfully I have put behind me. I will no longer use that pun. And then Coffee and Kareem. Ed Helms is a guy that I'm just constantly rooting for, and this plays on all of those buddy cop movies that you've seen prior, but it brings in the over-the-top comedy that I think a lot of people enjoyed. And this is what frustrates me so much about doing those Netflix reviews, because I have so many people so often get so upset with me saying, Austin, you're going too hard on these movies. And I'm like, if you paid $9 to watch this in a theater, would you be happy? And it's different because we get Netflix movies for free, so we just sit down, we turn our brain off, and I guarantee half of the angry comments that I get, some of those people didn't even watch the full movie. They're just in their kitchen making eggs or something. They're just like, you didn't have fun with the movie. And I'm like, I have to sit here and invest my time in a movie that is full of cliches, is full of the buddy cop elements that don't work in the good buddy cop movies, and it's not funny. If you thought this is funny, comedy is subjective, then I understand how you enjoy it. But as a film, it doesn't work. As a comedy, it doesn't work. And Ed Helms didn't really work in this movie, so Coffee and Cream for me is awful. I know I went on a rant, but apologies. Next up is Sergio in Ana de Armas. Fortunately, you weren't enough to put this on the okay tier, although you were great. And I thought the romance worked for what it was, but you're telling the true-life story in the midst of this sweeping drama that takes place in the aftermath of the U.S. invasion of Iraq, where the life of UN diplomat Sergio hangs in the balance during the most treacherous mission of his career. So you have his current state, and you're flashing back to the romance, building up his life, who this guy is, and the more you build up, the more you can relate to him being in peril at this moment in time. But Sergio just didn't do enough to make me care about him as much as the movie was going for. I cared about their romance, but even then, that aspect of the film was the weakest for me because I didn't want to know as much about the romance. I love Ana de Armas, but I wanted to know more about him. What makes him this great UN diplomat? So in that vein, it was disappointing. Sergio was a misfire for me, but it wasn't the worst. There were some really good filmmaking elements, and I think this director has potential. Next up, Sea Fever. So in Sea Fever, you have the crew of this ship, and they're marooned at sea. They're struggling for their lives against a parasite in the water supply. And I said it in my review, I'll say it again, this movie was so crazy in how it relates to us in quarantine, because the whole concept behind this film is the fact that the crew has to stay on the boat, because if they go onto land, there is a potential of spreading this parasite to everyone. And I related to that struggle. I'll tell you what, not that specific struggle. Obviously, it's much more dire, but there were some really cool elements to this movie. I mean, at the end of the day, I did want more out of it, but I am close to putting this on the good tier. I can't quite get it there. I'm going to put it on okay. It mixes and combines some of these things that make these tension-building thrillers with horror elements work. So I respect it for what it tried to do. Very low budget, but that's okay. Sea Fever was a cool movie that you can find on demand right now. Mortal Kombat Legends Scorpion's Revenge. Genuinely close to putting this on the great tier, but for what it was going for, I thought it did a really good job. It's an animated movie. It's obviously building up the lore behind Scorpion, but you also focus on all of these other characters. Joel McHale lends his voice. I thought he did a great job. The voice cast is great. If you're a Mortal Kombat fan and you're a Warner Brothers animation fan and you like what they're doing with the Justice League, this is genuinely the best thing I've seen from them in quite some time. I like it more than some of these other Justice League movies, and it really appeals to fans. It's fan service with a purpose. So if you like Mortal Kombat, I think you're really going to like this. I genuinely enjoyed myself. Oh, look, another movie I have to unfortunately put on the awful tier. The main event is going to appeal to WWE fans, and that's okay. Right, that's absolutely okay. And when the movie started out, I'm like, yeah, I kind of like this. I love what Fighting With My Family did. And I like the concept behind giving this kid this WWE mask to give him the ability to be a wrestler. It's almost like Mike, except this time you have a mask instead of the shoes. But then it goes off the rails and the kid turns into a superhero and people start finding out. I mean, this isn't a major spoiler, but people start finding out that he is this wrestler and everyone's okay with it. They're just like, yeah, crush the kid. And it's just like, this is too much for me, man. The main event was so cheesy, so over the top. It will have its moments with WWE fans, cameos in there and things that work this and that. But after seeing Fighting With My Family and knowing what they can do with not a similar concept, but this producing company, the main event, nope. Then we have We Summon the Darkness. I think I enjoyed this more than some other people will. I just found it to be a really fun horror B-movie. It's all about three best friends who embark on a road trip to a heavy metal show, and they bond with three aspiring musicians, and they head off for an after party, and it's got the quirky teenage elements of like, let's get together and have some fun, and it turns out somebody is actually bad, somebody's actually good. You have a cult that's going on a killing spree elsewhere, and that incorporates itself into here. You can imagine where it goes. It's not unpredictable in nature, but you know what? I'm going to put it on the okay tier because I had some fun with it. I think the cast helps as well. You have Logan Miller, you have Alexander Daddario, and Johnny Knoxville, who makes a crazy cameo. It's definitely, it's not the quality level that some will want. Like I said, it is kind of a B movie in nature, but I liked it for what it was. Next up, finally, we have a movie that I was very much anticipating. This is Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, a beautiful look into the life of a girl who travels to New York City with her friend to seek out medical help after an unintended pregnancy, and you're dealing with very scary topics here. Something that happened in her past that leads her to go in the direction that she goes, and it's a very well done and well executed movie. I had some issues in the way that certain things were portrayed, and I know a lot of people disagree with me. This has, one of the highest scores on Rotten Tomatoes of the year. I can't get it above the good tier. And I had one person get angry with me on Letterboxd. I don't really want to dive too deep into it, but I just didn't like the fact that they portrayed every single male character in this movie who was an adult as the creepiest, most disgusting human being on planet Earth. I mean, it's everyone from encountering some random guy on the subway to asking someone a question. Everyone's disgusting, and they're really sexual, and I understand from her perspective, especially after what happened to her, how she sees everyone in that light, but I just didn't like how it kind of portrayed everything in such a negative light. And then the story is one that is going to be divisive in nature because of what it's dealing with, the topic, and that doesn't bother me at all. I'm okay with a movie portraying a teen going through something like this. I just needed some things to change along the way to pique my personal interest a bit more. It's still beautifully made. The acting is incredible. I love the cast. I love the direction. Cannot wait to see what this director does next. So I don't think I liked Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always as much as others, but I still thought it worked really well, and it deserves the recognition for the filmmaking because it's a beautiful movie. So now, as we always do, we're going to rank these from my least favorite to my most favorite, and we start all the way at the bottom with The Jesus Rolls. Sorry, pal, you're going down here in last place. Followed by Behind You, Netflix's Jim in Dangerous Lies, The Road's Not Taken, The Main Event, and the last movie in the awful tier, which is good for Coffee and Kareem, is Coffee and Kareem. Obviously, we're sticking with Earth and Blood right there. I'm going to place Love, Wedding, Repeat at the end here. I just think Sergio had a bit more going for it. And Trolls World Tour, congratulations. We follow that up with the Willoughbys in last place on the OK tier. We Summon the Darkness and Sea Fever on the good tier. True History of the Kelly Gang at the bottom, followed by Swallow. Then we have Extraction. Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, looking good right there. Actually, I'm going to put LA Originals in between Extraction and that, and keep Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. And Austin, come on, Mortal Kombat is not better than that, but I got more enjoyment from Mortal Kombat Legends. I sound like a crazy person. And at the top, we have Bad Education as my favorite movie of last month, or this month, whenever you're watching this, and Tiger Tail in the second spot. That looks pretty good to me. And those are all of the movies that I saw in April. Now, obviously, this ranking will change. Keep up with that on Letterboxd, but I appreciate you guys for watching this video, sticking with me. I'm long-winded. I like to talk about movies, but a lot of these I didn't get the chance to review. You guys are truly the best, and I'll see you soon.